like to welcome everyone out to the Edge Mastermind call today. My name is Courtney Moses, and I'm a diamond and will be facilitating the call today. Over the last few weeks, I've been doing some research on, specific individuals, celebrities, athletes that really had a rough start in life, so to speak. So, their circumstances, the environment, the family dynamics, and everything about that made it really difficult for them to continue to succeed and reach the goals that they had for their life. And it was really interesting to just kind of point out just a few things on some of these people I was reading about, like Albert Einstein. He didn't speak until he was 4 years old. In fact, many of the people thought that he was, just a dud and that he wouldn't amount to anything and that he was just lazy. The reason why he wasn't speaking is because he was just lazy, and that's what all his school teachers thought. And, of course, we know he went on to develop a theory that, many of us still can't even really wrap our heads around. There are many celebrities, like Benjamin Franklin, dropped out of the age at school at the age of 10 because his parents couldn't even afford to keep him in school. And yet, he invented the lightning rod and bifocals and also was one of the America's founding fathers. Oprah Winfrey, I thought this was extremely fascinating. Well, not fascinating, but very interesting what she overcame. One of the most successful and richest people in the world today. She was born in Milwaukee and was repeatedly molested by cousins, uncle, family friend, and ran away from the age of home at the age of 14. But yet look at who she is today. And it was just so interesting as I was reading about them, Thomas Edison, another one, so many of these, Michael Jordan, in his high school year, tried out for the varsity team and didn't make it. His coaches told him that he was too short and wouldn't amount to anything. And later, throughout his life, he took that, that feeling of, I'm going to prove my worth to you, and became one of the North America's greatest athletes in the 20th century, and he said second to only Babe Ruth. So it's just so interesting. I was reading about so many of these people that, entered this world in such extreme circumstances, yet they accomplished so much throughout life. And as I read about them, from these people in all different walks of life, I sat back and I just thought to myself, like, why? Why did they continue to get up every single day to literally face, a living hell in some of these situations that they were in? Why did they continue to strive for their goals day after day after day when everything around them told them not to, and in some cases were even impossible to reach those goals? And as I sat there and thought about that, I couldn't help but think about, why do I get up every day? Why do I continue on the journey that I'm on? And it made me think about, doTERRA. And as I thought about doTERRA, I've seen many people that have started doTERRA and they reach their goals and continue to reach goals. And many people start, and then after some minor setbacks and failures, they quit. They're just done. And as I thought about that, I don't know why some people quit and some don't, and why some, whether it's in doTERRA and life and all these different things. And so today on the call, I really wanted to kind of just discuss this and see if we can figure out what makes a person strive every day to live the life that they're dreaming of, right? Because there's something to that, because it's not just about the circumstances, because that's been proven wrong. Many people are born into circumstances, that are unfair, or however you want to look at that, extreme circumstances, and yet still develop into this incredible individual. So my first question that I want to pose to that mastermind today is, as at this level, being leadership and above, you see people that start and quit. So what are some of the top reasons of why you see people quit in doTERRA? So you can hit *5* to raise your hand. But what are some of the top reasons of why you see people quit in doTERRA? Seth, Rod, I'm assuming you guys got the dashboard then.
We do. Virginia Hume has a comment.
Virginia has a comment.
Top
right,
reason,
Virginia.
Thank you. It's not easy.
It's not easy. Okay.
And you have to choose to be persistent. And some people haven't had enough experiences in life to be willing to be that persistent.
It's not easy. So when you say that, like, experiences so far in their life have told them that they get what they want. It's pretty easy to them. So then starting this becomes not easy. And so it's hard for them to continue because they don't have the experiencing that. Is that what you're saying then?
Yeah, so as I describe it to those who I'm teaching, if you choose doTERRA as a business and help and share with a lot of people, you need to have a couple of attitudes. Remember, you're growing an oak tree, not growing sprouts. So there's certain things to do, the 631, in order for that. And sometimes you have to have a vision of what you want, and you hyper-focus on that, not everything else that comes along the way, because this will be a lot of personal growth. And whatever stuff you need to work with, you're going to have to work through it. There's people who support you and sustain you in this. But if you'll have the courage to follow the 631 and let me work with you, then you can be successful.
Right.
They have to.
So I'm going to put in there too, like being able to work through, because we just want to think about why it makes them quit, right? And so it's really what you're describing then as someone not able or willing to put in the work, and not wanting to change their mindset on some things, right?
Right, exactly. We all hit different walls, and I've listened to y'all talk about the walls are different for every level, and you've got to work through it.
Right.
And you have to choose to become a true shepherd and not a sheep herder. And those are skills, and as well as a mindset. And you're so focused on helping your leaders with their goals, you know your goal will happen because you help them grow and progress. And if you can wrap your head around that and have the courage to do it, it will come. And as Seth has taught, don't be so focused on the date as you are the process. And that helped me, just keep at it, It's going to come. And my leaders are getting stronger, and it's really exciting. And they're declaring, I want to do such and such by this time. I said, that's wonderful. So what's your strategy? How are you doing this? I'm applying the 6-way run. And I said, that's right. Now, who did you talk to today? And frame it just because of everything that you've given us. If we just choose to walk the path, and there will be dry times, it doesn't matter. There's someone else who won't, someone's waiting. Next, you've got to keep working at it.
Hey, Courtney,
So
Alonto.
you've got some good things here, Virginia. So we've got some of the top reasons of why you've seen people quit is that it's not easy. They're not willing to work through some of their mindset changes, not willing to do the work necessary for their goals. Perhaps they don't have the skill set. And then you also brought up focus. They're not focused on their goal. All right, anyone else? Anything? What are some of the top reasons of why you see people quit in doTERRA?
Alonto has his hand up.
And then Bernie Marquez.
All right, go ahead, Alonto.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
So there's two things that I look at when it comes to people quitting. And the first one is that the reason that they're doing it is not strong enough to overcome the concern or the block that they have, right? And that's what really gets most people to quit. And then the other one, which I don't think is really pointed out that much, is that with any level of success that people attain, there's a major price that you have to be willing to invest to get that reward. And for most people and life in general, when it comes to that 6 inches to gold, we'll give you an out, right? We'll give you an out to, hey, if this is too difficult for you, why didn't you just go back to the way things were, right? It's hard. And the amazing thing is, and this is kind of the way I explain our journey, is that you know how you're always told keep the bridge open, right? Keep it open so that if you ever have to go back, you can go back. So don't burn bridges is the idea that most people have when it comes to the things that they do. But I actually have a different opinion on that. I say if you know what you want, burn the bridge that would get you to go back to the original thing that you have, because at that point you'll have no other choice. So when we decided to go full on with doTERRA, like within 3 months, I quit my job because I wanted that freedom life, right? I was so committed to that I burnt that bridge with my job so I could focus on doTERRA full time. And that sacrifice, or that price that I was willing to pay, paid off in dividends to where we were at after 13 months, and then where we're at now when it comes to our organization.
Right. I think you're bringing up some interesting points, Alonzo, because I don't think that we're going to tell everyone, okay, go quit your job, do doTERRA full time, right? But you just bring up the point that, yeah, there is a major price or sacrifice that has to be made, when you're looking at getting such a great payoff here, right? Your end result or reward, the other thing too, Alonzo, that you brought up then is, your reason why you're starting not to overcome, the block that they have. I think this is really interesting because I think most of us, when we start doTERRA, most of our reasons why we started really aren't that strong, right? Because it's just based on this hope of something, right? And, your why and your reason for doing it just becomes stronger and stronger over time. And so, oftentimes when I see people quit, it is early on in their journey because their why isn't strong enough in the beginning. But the longer you stay there, the more developed your why becomes, and that's just something you're not willing to walk away from,
Hey, Courtney.
So I think those are, I definitely have seen those in my organization, as well. I think those are fantastic points.
Yeah. Courtney.
All right. Yeah.
So I have a couple thoughts, and then Bernie Marquez has his hand raised too. But I think the reason why people quit, I think all of it comes down to belief. They just don't believe that if they either don't believe in the opportunity that it can do for them what they're hoping it can do or wanting it to do, or they don't believe in themselves. And I think that it really kind of comes down to those two elements is why I've seen people quit, is that they don't believe in the opportunity. And then, of course, I've seen people quit over, if they don't believe in the product or something like that. Like they know that essential oils work really well for certain things, but they just want it to work for everything or for a certain thing. And then they'll go, well, if it can't fix this, so they set unrealistic expectations on the product, or they don't, or I think what it ultimately comes down to is people they quit when they stop believing that it's going to work for them.
Uh-huh. That's interesting too, because you see that on the financial part too, right? Like, well, I've been doing this for, 3 months and I've only made $300 or whatever, obviously it doesn't work.
Or I've spent more than I've made or something like that. I mean, but this doesn't just apply to doTERRA. This applies to everything. I think of like other businesses that I've owned that have not been doTERRA. And okay, well, why did we choose to close that business down, or why did we no longer pursue that course? And it became a result of a lack of belief in either the possibilities of the company, or an understanding came to us that we realized, okay, this actually can't do more than it's doing currently. Like it can create income, it can create a cash flow, it can be a business that works, but it's not going to make our dreams come true. So we're going to pursue a different course. And I think that's kind of been, so I think that when people all of a sudden don't believe that doTERRA can do what they're hoping it can do, then that's when you start having that happen. One other thing you mentioned, all these people at the beginning of your call, where you mentioned these people that overcame all of these different incredible hardships, whether it was extreme poverty or terrible, life situations where they've been, where it's impacted their life in a way that you would think that they wouldn't succeed. But the thing that's interesting is that at some point they believed that that they had a way out and that they worked towards that belief. And that's why I think it's incredibly damaging. I mean, we're in a political season right now, a political cycle. And whenever I see people running for office that are constantly telling the people that are voting for them that you can't succeed, the deck is stacked against you, the system's rigged against you, you need to vote for me so that I can make it right for you. And the problem is if you look at what's happening in our country right now, there are a lot of people who are buying into that have lost a belief in the American dream, that they can do something about their life and their situation. And when that happens, they stop trying. They quit on life and on their dreams, and they look to a figurehead, someone else, to come along and make it right for them. They're looking for a savior, right? And unfortunately, that never works. And so so I think that the same thing's happening in doTERRA. That's the issue. Why people quit is they lose belief, and so our job is to constantly boost our team with more and more belief.
Right. No, I think it's interesting that you say that, because as I was reading on some of these, I remember one of them in particular, Roger Bannister, first man to hit the 4 minute mile. And when he did that, it was only 46 days later that someone else went and beat that record by like 2 seconds. And so I just think it's interesting. And it took him, I believe it was 4 years, working on this, trying to do it. And he got to a place where he just thought, I just don't believe, if this is possible anymore. And then he went out and did a race. I can't remember what year this was in. And he realized it was like a 4:02. He realized that, oh my word, I can shave a few more seconds off of this. You know what I mean? All of a sudden he realized it was doable, and that belief went up. And then 2 years later, he was able to do that. And so I think what you're saying is true. I think we give ourselves a lot of excuses, of why people quit, like, oh, my spouse isn't supporting me, or I don't have $100 a month to do this. But, I think you're right. And one of those core things that really comes down to is the belief. So I appreciate you bringing that up. All right, Bernie.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, I love what's been said between the belief and just having the desire to move forward. And I guess the one word I would say is understanding. Janet and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. We talked a lot about the Robert Kiyosaki's the buckets to pipeline analogy, and something that really just hit home for me was that we talked about the pipeline. We don't necessarily talk about how difficult it's going to be. And from my experience of doing landscaping and having to work with a pickaxe and actually lay pipe, it's not smooth sailing. It's pretty difficult a lot of times, especially if it's in any like, for example, in the Wood River Valley, it's very rocky type soil. And so there's times you have to like dig, and you have to, you get a shovel out and you move rocks to bury a pipeline. And so when we can really have an understanding that it's going to be difficult and help people to know that there's going to be times where it's going to be tough. It's not all peaches and cream the entire time. And if they can understand that, and if you can talk with them in the beginning and say, there's going to be times that are difficult. And I actually read this in GoPro by Eric Worre. He discusses when he brings on a prospect, and he learned this from one of his upline or mentor, that he would tell them, there's going to be times where you're going to doubt what you're doing. It's going to be frustrating. Do you want me to leave you alone, or do you want me to remind you of why you're doing what you're doing, and allow them to choose? So you're setting the foundation. Say, it's going to be tough. There's days it's going to suck, but what do you want me to do for you? And so if you help them with the understanding in the beginning, it's going to be a lot easier. And plus, you're not going to put so much emotion into that person, because they've already told you what they're going to do, and so ahead of time how to help them.
Yeah, and I like that you bring that up, because I think sometimes, especially in doTERRA, we don't want to scare people away, right? We don't want to tell them about the bad days. We don't want to tell them that there's days you just want to cry and quit because we're trying to convince them and help them see why they should do this, right? And I think sometimes we don't paint that picture as clear as we should for new people coming on, and so then they get discouraged and think it's going to be easier than what it is. And I'm not saying we don't have to scare them away, but I do think that what you're saying is true, that, that to really help people understand what they're truly getting into and why they're getting into it, helps them through those difficult times.
Right. Hey, Courtney, this is
yeah.
Rod. I was thinking about it. One of the things that comes up when I hear about difficulty in my mind, or the journey being hard, the first question that comes to my mind is hard compared to what? And
right.
So, for example, is it harder than passing the LSAT so you can become an attorney? Is it harder than taking out $150,000 in student loans so that you can be a doctor? And harder than passing a medical test? Is it harder than going to the hospital every day to learn how to do the surgery that would actually pay you equivalent levels to what a network marketing business can do for you? And so
is it harder than a conventional business?
Right. Is it harder than a traditional business? Is it harder than, here's the thing. doTERRA handles the hard part.
Right.
The hard part is sourcing the oils. The hard part is customer service and dealing with the customer service issues on the phone and replacing broken bottles. The hard part is building buildings and figuring out how to put the financing together for that. That's the hard part. The part that we have, which is the other 50% of the revenue, is directed straight at us, and all we have to do is tell people about it. and so if there's a difficulty, it's not that the journey isn't hard. The hard part is our own emotional status on how difficult it is for us to talk to somebody. And at some point, I guess some people believe that it's so hard to talk to somebody that they would rather go do the truly hard things, which is getting up and working 9 to 5 for minimal pay that will never increase above inflation. To me, that's hard. When I had to go to work at the convenience store, that was hard. I had to stock a cooler. That was hard manual labor, and I had to mop the floors, and I had to figure out how to run the cash register, and I was accountable for the cash. So if I counted wrong, I was in trouble.
Yeah.
That was hard, and I didn't like it that much. And so getting up and knowing I had to go to work, I mean, it was nice knowing that I was going to get the $15 or $20 that I was going to make that day. But that was painful. And I think of my doTERRA business, and I can hardly wait to get up in the morning. Matter of fact, it seems like I'm awake most of the time because I'm awake at night thinking about what's going to happen the next day. It's so.
Yeah, but that's because you believed, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
So it is lack of belief, but sometimes I wonder if the difficulty of the climb isn't mostly the ease of the slope. meaning that it's so easy that we can't believe it, and so easy that it's easy to not do. It's so easy to do that it's it's so easy that you don't do it. It's so easy to talk to your neighbor when you run. It's so easy to say, "Are you open to natural forms of health and wellness?" So it's so easy to say these things that it rolls off our tongue. Yet it's the fear or the pain or whatever. The rejection. Somebody might say no. Well, they said no anyway if you don't ask them. So even that is not hard.
But people quit over this.
Right.
Yeah.
People quit over it.
But they quit over it. And
Right.
and the thing is, I think you're onto something here when we talk about being hard, because there's a difference between it being like physically hard or emotionally hard and mentally hard. And what I've realized is that doTERRA honestly is by far one of the hardest things I've done mentally. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, the things I've had to shift in my mind to make this work have been insane. But I've had other jobs that have been a lot more physically challenging on me. I was a nurse, a CNA for a while into nursing and work on my LPN. And that was hard. That was hard to go to school and work full time and do shifts back to back and, move people around that weighed twice as much as me and clean up after them and stuff like that. That was physically hard, right? And if I had to look at like choosing that over what I do now, like I'd much rather work with what's in between my ears, fix what's going on in my head, than to have to go do that, and that's not putting anyone down that does anything like that. I'm just saying I think doTERRA is just more mentally hard, right? So we make it up to be harder and bigger than what it really is.
I know. It was so hard for me to get on the airplane over the weekend, and so hard for me to rent that convertible car and drive it down the beautiful thing. It was mentally exhausting when I had to go talk to people and change their lives and have them cry in front of me about how much I benefited them, and listening to all the stories of amazing life benefits that have come across people that I've shared. I mean, it was emotionally terrorizing.
You know that we kind of just want to slap you right now, though, right? I mean, you realize people listening to you kind of want to slap you for saying this.
Right. I mean, I want to find a right.
And we're like, why are we sitting here?
I want to find a root beer right now and just cry it. Yeah, it's just emotionally. Yeah, and then all that time, I guess I did miss a birthday over the weekend. Jennifer's birthday I missed, and so she'll get twice the reward for that. And so yeah, boy. Yeah.
Well said.
Anyway,
no. Hey,
so
you're being totally unfair though, because I mean, Kristen Fox and Stephanie Green have something to say, but like, what about the time when you were driving down the road and your flipping car blew up on you and you had no money, or how about the time when you're sleeping on people's couches, driving around and you're getting hardly paid anything. Your Unilevel check's $250 a month, and your expenses are $500. I mean,
Or how about the time I've got my hate emails? Do you want to tell the hate emails? You got people telling you what a crummy person you are. Like, my world fell apart on that, and you know that stuff because I called you. I'm like, oh my gosh, it happened again, right?
Right.
Or it was hard when I didn't feed my family for 2 days because I knew that my Fast Start check would come in, but I had to put on a training for my team, and I had to buy them flowers for advancing ranks, and my family ate on nothing. There are hard times in there too.
Right. I mean, kind of like going to school when I was going to college and I couldn't even afford a sandwich, so I'd scrape quarters and stuff out of the sofas to buy the little 50-cent sandwiches out of the vending machine. Yeah, that I remember.
Right, that was hard too.
Right.
In other words, there's crap that happens everywhere.
Yeah, there's crap that happens in your life. And when my car blew up, it was such a miracle. I couldn't help but just sit there and smile. I don't know. I haven't even told this story, have I?
Yeah, you told me about it.
Anyway, do you want to hear the story? This is amazing. So our car. We only had one family. I only had one family at the time. One car for the family. Right, had one car for the family, and I'm driving, and so we start to make a little bit of money in doTERRA. I mean, just a little bit. And so one of our distributors had a used car for sale, and I thought, this is my moment. And so I was going to buy it for like $1,000 in cash. And I said, well, what if it blows up on me? And he said, well, if it does, I'll come and get you. And I was like, great. So I jumped in this car, and I start heading I get out across Colorado, and I pass the last sign of civilization, and I'm cruising along. When I hear a thunk, and I'm like, what was that? And car's still cruising along, and then all of a sudden it just drops 10 miles an hour. So I was going 75, and it just drops down to 65. It just like, and I was like, ooh, that must be bad. But we're still going 65 miles an hour, just cruising down the road. And then I'm like, I wonder if I should pull off the road and have a look to see if something happened. And so I see an exit coming up, and there's a gas station there, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should pull over and just check the car out. I'm still going 65 miles an hour, and then I'm closing up to the exit. The car's still going 65, and I'm wondering, wow, I guess I could just keep going, and but then I glance up and I notice that the RPM gauge is at 0, so the engine isn't running, but the car is still going 65 miles an hour. And I look up, and the overheat meter is clear over on the hot. And I'm like, oh, this is bad. So I swung up on the exit, still going 65 miles an hour, get up to the exit, and there is nothing but that gas station to the right, like with a pump on it. But as I'm sitting there, all of a sudden smoke bellows out from under the hood. And I look down at the bottom of the hill is a mechanic shop. And so I'm sitting there with smoke. By this time, I realized that the engine had blown up. And so I'm sitting there, and the car is just flat dead with smoke pouring out from the hood. And then I'm just standing there, and some people pull up behind me, and we just push the car, and I coast right to the door of the mechanic shop. It was a flat out miracle because I was 20 miles from the town I had just passed, and the next town was another 20 miles. And so the engine blew, and the car kept going all the way till I coasted into a mechanic shop. It was such a miracle. I just sat there and smiled the whole time. I was like, I can't believe this. Car's dead. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And I barely had enough for the hotel room, but the shop drove me down to the hotel. And sure enough, good to his word, our team member came and picked me up and drove me the rest of the way to Wisconsin. And so it was the hardships are your chance for a miracle. That's my message there.
Well, good.
So Kristen Fox.
Awesome.
Kristen Fox still has her.
All right, great. Kristen, and who else raised their hands?
And Stephanie Green. Yeah.
All right, Kristen and Stephanie.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
So, as you guys have been talking about how hard it is to, rent that convertible and stuff like that, I don't know everything, but I know a lot of the details and a lot of the strife of what it was that you guys endured and what you went through. And it helps me to know that as I go through this emotional stuff and financial and relationship and all of that, just all of the struggles that just come with life in general, anytime you're progressing, that's really what it is. If you want to progress in life, you're going to come across these anyway. It's not just doTERRA. And recently I've been part of a mentoring program. And actually my upline, Julianne, I was down in Texas, and she was helping me just kind of get through some limiting beliefs. And what was interesting is that she and David talked with me about how these limiting beliefs actually served you at one point, and all you were wanting from this limiting belief was formed probably as a child, sometime before the age of 10. And it actually served you and protected you and helped you at one point in your life. And so these were there at one point to protect us. And as we grow up and we go through life, they're still there, and we think that they're protecting us, but really they're just holding us back. And how great it was, because it's not like, I feel like, well, what limiting beliefs do you have? To me, in my mind, I'm thinking that's a bad thing. I'm limiting myself. Why would I limit myself? I am a creator. I am a daughter of God. I am of royal lineage. I have major purpose on this planet. Why would I ever limit myself? But when I realized that I'm so grateful that I was protected from that time in my life where I needed that, and then I just need to be grateful that existed, and then recognize and understand that I can let that go. And that's part of what will help me pull up those anchors, throw them back into the boat, and off we go, and just start cruising. And so we have these limiting beliefs. They're the ones that hold us back. Yes, it has to do with belief, but it's those limiting beliefs that stop us, that get hooked at the bottom of the lake, and sometimes we get thrown off the boat. And I just had to say that just because I don't want anybody to feel bad for feeling stupid for not going forward faster or better or staying in doTERRA, because really there's nothing wrong with you. You're just on the course of life that everyone else is on, and it's exactly what needs to happen. And whether or not, like I was on the phone with Bernie a couple days ago. I was like, I made a decision a long time ago. I am never going to quit doTERRA because of the confirmation that I received at the very beginning. Not everybody receives a confirmation, but I did,
right.
and it was very strong. And I decided that since I was never going to quit, I might as well figure it out. I can either sit here and be miserable and do it like halfway, or I can really do it. And some people sabotage themselves, and they're like, I know that I made that commitment. I know I had that confirmation, but I just can't do it. And that's where the limiting beliefs come in. So I don't want anybody to feel stupid or dumb or anything like that. It's just part of the journey. And we're all, I mean, my purpose on the planet is to be the best person I can be, to stand in front of my Creator and to thank Him and to continue progressing. My soul and my spirit have so much to do even after this life. And so whether or not I do doTERRA or not, I'm going to be progressing. I might as well live the best life in the whole world with the people in doTERRA and do this the real way. And so that's what I've chosen. I hope that what I said helped somebody. So anyway.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Stephanie.
Oh, I just was sitting listening to all you guys talk, and the thought that came into my head is, with the question you asked, Courtney, being, what makes people quit? I started thinking about what was it that almost made me quit? What was it that was my hardest thing that brought me to my breaking point where I almost threw my hands in the air and said, I'm done, I can't do this anymore. And for me, and I think this is something that a lot of women who do doTERRA struggle with. I don't know if men struggle with it or not because I'm not a man, but where does it fit in my life with my family? And that is a very hard thing for some of us to really get through, especially if you've been raised to believe that your sole purpose in life, and I hope I don't come across sounding negative or anything, but this is something that I'm really passionate about. Anyway, especially if you've been raised to believe that your sole purpose in life is to have babies and raise children, and that is going to be your glory and what you are supposed to do in this life. Granted, now that is amazing, and that is an important role and an important job for us to perform, but that's not it. That's not all there is to life. I've watched women who believe that in their life, that their sole purpose is to have babies and raise children, and when their children leave their home, they don't know what to do with themselves. So I see that, and I see the struggle that I know I dealt with and that I watch my leaders deal with is, where does it all fit? How do I be a good wife, a good mom, and still build doTERRA and not let my family suffer in the process? Because it's a really hard distinction to make when you are going out to teach a class and your kids say, Mom, you have another class tonight, but you had a class last night. Mom, you're really going again? You know, it's hard to make that distinction between building my family and building my business. And are they separate? Or are they joined? You know, I think that's something that every mother who builds doTERRA is going to come up against, and it's hard. And it's hard to get through. And I think it's a very individual thing for each mother who deals with it, how they get through it. But I know for me, it went back to, I've heard Seth talk many, many times about finding your divine mission and purpose. And I think raising a good, righteous family is part of it, but it's not all of it. And I think every single one of us has to figure out what is our divine mission and purpose, and where does doTERRA fit in that divine mission and purpose. And when we do figure that out, then you can see how your family and your business grow together and they're not detracting from each other. Then you can understand where, you know, the purpose and the goal of when you go teach that 5th class for the week and your children are looking at you saying, Mommy, you're going again. You understand where you're going and what you're creating and what it's going to really do for your family. But it has to go back to, what is your divine mission and purpose? And where does doTERRA fit in that divine mission and purpose? Because I guarantee that if you're just looking at where does it fit in my life and in my family, you're not going to find it because it's hard.
Right.
Hey, Courtney. Courtney. This is Rod. I want to just give another little perspective on that comment that Stephanie made, and that's fantastic. And what I'd like to do is give you the viewpoint from my perspective of having already gone through the trial and already sitting on the other side of it. In other words, what does the end game look like, and what did happen to the mom and the family and the dad and the children that were crying about about mom having to leave and things like that, because those things happened in my household. So I know that.
Can we hold off on that for just a minute? Because that's actually the direction I'm going to take the call at the end, because I want people to see that. So do you mind if we hold off for just a minute on that?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I want to hear it, and so does everyone else. But yeah, hold on. So I just want to thank all of you so far for bringing this up, because it's hard to acknowledge why we quit, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing the things that you guys have. So you've got a lot of reasons here of why people quit in doTERRA. And a lot of it we're coming down to, it's still coming down to that belief level. So I want you to think about some of these things, lack of, like the understanding, the financial hardship, lack of support, the limiting beliefs, the balance we're trying to strive in life, not willing to do the necessary work. I mean, all of these things that we've listed so far, reasons why people quit. I want you to think about somebody on your team that in doTERRA has experienced or been in and dealt with and overcome those circumstances and reached their goal with doTERRA. And I just want to hear some examples of people that have been through some of this stuff that we've talked about and being able to overcome that.
Is this where I get a say?
You can talk now, Rob. I just wanted other people to start thinking about that too, because that's where we're going now. So
right.
Thank you.
Right. There was a big period of time. My kids. I'm 6 years in doTERRA now, and we've ascended to pretty much the top of the company, and we've crossed the journey, and we started at the bottom rail. And Jennifer had done the first Diamond Club. Because of my work and things like that, I wasn't able to leave for the first Diamond Club. And so a lot of these things, and we at that time ended up, in order to do the first Diamond Club, we had to do some radical things, so, the types of things that most people wouldn't do. And we actually pulled all of our kids out of school, and Jennifer took them to Wisconsin, where we could have access to a second car, and they went to school in Wisconsin from our family farm. And I ended up staying in our house by myself for a little bit, and then Natalie and Andy returned from Australia, and they were homeless. And it turned out that I was able to offer them my home during that time. So it was kind of another bridge gap, because they were waiting for their house to become available, which was another few months further from that. So they were in that spot where they were disrupted as well, bringing their kids around and things like that. I remember my kids crying because we had another class, and they didn't want to pull up, clean up the house for guests, and we'd have to get things all set up, and the kids would get shuffled off down the stairs. And during that time, Jennifer was pretty engaged in the whole process as well. And my youngest daughter one day was sitting on the countertop and grabbed my wife by the face and just said, "Mommy, I'm so grateful that you're part of a team. I'm so happy." So in other words, there was something that was happening amid all that chaos that was impacting the kids, but it wasn't the way we thought. It was impacting them in a very positive way, where they started to see our family take action for our future. And I didn't realize that until now. My older daughter, who used to scream at the top of her lungs that she hates the oils, that they stink, and that were bad, and another doTERRA thing. This is my oldest daughter. Finally, decided, got into a college, was worried about student loans, but had watched me have the ability to write a check for the entire year of college for housing and food without budgeting for that month. And it was a little while later, I got a card in the mail from that daughter, and she said, I don't know if we've ever told you how much we love and appreciate you for the sacrifices that you made so that we can enjoy what we enjoy today. And now that daughter, now with her new husband, has joined doTERRA on our team. But what we've realized now is that the kids are recognizing the sacrifice, and they went from not being able to dream to being able to watch us make dreams happen. And because of that, it's forever impacted each one of my kids in a deep way. Because now when you ask them what they want to do, it usually has to do with what they can imagine, whether rather than what it used to be, which is I don't know. And so I think there's a great power in recognizing, or what I've come to recognize in our world, is that sacrifice equaled not loss, but rather demonstrated the pathway to real purpose and meaning. And our kids have ended up having some great opportunities because of doTERRA, and now they've come to love it. And they actually have an extreme sense of gratitude for it because they recognize it now as the source of many, many blessings. And so I know there is a lot of sacrifice. There is a lot of disruption to homes that do occur. And I for one, now I'm coming on to 21 years of happy marriage. I have a tremendous family unit. I have great kids. And as a result, that came as a result of the fire of the trials that we went through, and to build such an amazing family unit that we have today. So I just want to put it out there that looking down the mountain at the trial of those climbing the cliffs, that recognizing that the summit is beautiful and the air is clean and the sky is blue and the valley below and the view is amazingly gorgeous. And recently, when my daughter got married, I realized that they were going to go through some extreme hardships. But every time they were worried about it, all I could do was laugh because I knew that they would be okay. And I looked at them and I go, I know exactly how your path is going to be, daughter and new son-in-law. I know you're going to have a hard time buying food. And I know that you're going to worry about the car breaking down. And I know that you're going to worry about all these things. And I know where it leads. And so therefore, I'm excited for you. And I'm excited for your trials. And I found that odd being a parent, watching my children getting married, knowing what they're going to go through, but knowing what they're going to gain.
Right.
Hey,
Thank you. I think if you look at that, so much of the difference of why some people quit and why some succeed is it comes down to that payoff and that belief and understanding of what you're describing. Like, even though many people aren't tasting the fruits of their labor right now and experiencing what you have right now, Rod, right? That they believe it's possible and that they can do it.
Courtney.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Court.
Yeah.
There? All right. So the question is when have we seen someone on our team not quit? Right? Right.
They worked through any of those circumstances that we talked about and overcame that.
So I've seen this a lot, but I'll give you just a couple of examples. My sister Jacqueline, her husband was, and David David readily admits this. I mean, he owns it very well, but he was more than just a unsupportive spouse. He was combative about it, and Jacqueline many times said that she could only do doTERRA when David wasn't home because she could not have him see her do it. So here she was trying to figure out, she's homeschooling 5 kids, and she has a husband that is combative about the whole thing, and she's trying to build this. Now, that alone, I've seen so many people quit over that. Like many people would have never ever. Well, I mean, sorry, my spouse isn't on board with this. I'm done. I mean, how many times have we seen that? That happens all the time.
Right.
And yet now David is quitting his job to join her in doTERRA, and and not just quitting his job, closing a business, his own business, to do this. And then the other, probably the greatest example of this to me, if you don't mind, is you. I've seen people who said, well, I'll start building my business after we move because we're about to move from this house to this house. I think that while you were going diamond, you moved 2 or 3 times in the process and never actually stopped the activities of building the business while you were moving your family. I've seen people quit over the fact that they feel torn because they want to be a good mom to their kids and they felt terrible about leaving. I know that your kids screamed and cried and bawled when you were leaving, and they still do. But you don't quit. I've seen people quit because their marriage is on the rocks, and I saw you try your very hardest to make a marriage work, where you did everything you possibly could to make that marriage work, and in the end, he wanted out. And I saw him say, when you go diamond, then I'm going to leave you. And then for all of the apprehension and all the years of you holding back and not wanting to go diamond because you thought that that's when he would leave. And yet you still overcame that and went diamond. How about the time when you actually did try to quit, but not just by saying it, you just stopped returning my phone calls. But in the end, it was just a quick email that said, do you want to do this or not? And you still chose in. Or the time when you had, I mean, the fact of the matter is that you have had the opportunity and the excuses to quit that most people would have used any one of the things that happened to you. And I've actually just touched on a few of them that I could keep going, but they're relatively personal in nature. But it's like, if so many people would have quit with just one of those excuses, and yet you just kept going over and over and over and over. And so the real question is why didn't you? I mean,
it's really easy, I'll tell you. Oh, I'm crying, thank you. Because failure was not an option. And I knew no matter how many setbacks I was going to have, no matter how many times I had to walk to hell and back, the only way failure was real is if I quit. And that was not an option. I remember, before doTERRA, when we worked together in the company that, did summer sales program, I remember one thing that always stuck with me when I started doTERRA, and it happened many years ago. And I remember you quoting Les Brown, something to the fact that if you fall down, make sure you land on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. And I felt that. I can't tell you how many times I've fallen down. I can't tell you how many broken bones I've had. How many broken bones my kids have had through this journey of 5 years of doing doTERRA. But failure is just not an option. That's it. It's just that simple for me. It's not an option, period. Done. Case closed. And so I don't.
Yeah.
So I get up every day and I'm like, okay, so if that's not an option, what am I going to do today? Oh, that's right. I'm building my business. And I'm going to do all the things that Rod talked about. And I teach my children to dream. And I taught them what commitment is, what sacrifice is, what love is, what endurance is. I've taught them all of these things in building my business simply because I just didn't quit. Yeah. Take away all the successes. Every day is a success if you just don't quit. Just keep going, right?
Right.
Like, we say this all the time, that failure is accelerated learning, right? And I'm like, no, failure is just quitting. You're going to have setbacks. For sure you're going to have setbacks. But the only failure you're going to experience is if you just quit.
Amen, sister.
I don't even know what to say now. Thank you.
Well, it's just...
We all worked up and passionate.
It's true, though. I mean... And at some point, I mean, failure wasn't an option, but it was also failure in something that you believed would work for you. And so, at some point, you believed that the sacrifices would pay off. And I think that that in the end is really, you had a belief that if you kept going, that it would mean what you needed it to mean for you. And I mean, I remember, again, I know this is kind of personal stuff, but I remember when everything about what was happening in your marriage was coming to light to you, and it kind of like this realization set in on you that if you could not make that marriage work, that you had better have a fallback plan. You better have a way to provide for you and your boys if you couldn't make the marriage work. And so when it was failure, now you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like failure no longer became an option when you realized what could happen in your life. And unfortunately, I think that we need it to get that bad before we say, okay, I mean, and before you say, okay, I'm going to for sure do this. And, like failure is not an option. I'm going to pay the price, whatever the price may be. And, and so hopefully we can, help people realize that they can make that choice without it having such dire consequences as what happens if you quit. But anyway.
Right. Well, and I think through, many of us, those excuses we want to give ourselves to quit are really the reasons why you keep going, right? I mean, just like the crying kids is why you don't want to quit. They're also the reason why, or the reason why you want to quit. You don't want them to cry over you being gone, but they're also the reason why you keep going, so you can offer them more. Yeah. And I just realized that my kids are going to cry whether I'm doing doTERRA or, going to the grocery store, or, anytime I'm gone, kids are going to cry, right? So why does it matter if it's doTERRA? I kind of just got to that point that I was like, they're going to cry. They're going to cry because I can't buy them things, because we can't go anywhere. We can't do anything, like they're going to cry. So I'd rather them cry over doTERRA than any of the other reasons.
Right. Or the tears of you leaving to do something like this is a lot different than the tears of not being able to afford food later on.
Right.
You're swapping the tears. You're saying, okay, I'm choosing these tears versus the others that will come if I don't do it.
Mad tears instead of despair tears.
Yeah. Any other comments on this? Does anyone have their hands raised?
There's no.
So really, we're coming to the end of our hour here. Just any other final thoughts on, what separates that? What makes people keep going versus, those that quit? Any last thoughts or comments anyone wants to share?
There's a hand up from Virginia.
Because of your leadership and willingness to put it so simple that anyone could do it if they wanted to. And I could listen to calls, and when I have the hardest days, I can listen to you talk and help me to boost my belief, because I know my goal's right. And there will be rough times, and that's called mortality. And as a grandma, there are times I'd like to do more for my grandchildren, and I can't do it now, but in time I will be able to.
Thank you, Virginia. We love you. Any other comments? All right. I'll just leave everybody. I heard this quote, and I don't remember who it's from, but it's always kind of stuck with me. Anytime I find myself in a rut or feel like, oh, this isn't what I wanted or expected, or it's different than I thought it would be, and the quote is, you are where you are at the end of the day because that's exactly where you want to be. And I think, Seth, that you nailed it so early on in this phone call, that so much of this comes down to your belief. And if you have a high enough belief in what you're doing, then you can wake up every day and make the choices to live the life that you dream of. And if you're not there at the end of every day, it's because you're not choosing it. You're not choosing to be there. You're not choosing to do the right activities. And for whatever reason, deep down, that's exactly where you want to be. And so I just encourage each of you to continue to make that choice every day, that you're going to live the life of your dream. And the thing is, once you truly make it one time, you don't have to make it again. It just becomes a habit, and it's just a part of who you are to be able to live that life and build your business and your pipeline to further bless, those in your home and in the community and in the world around you. So I thank each of you for participating and being on the call today, and I wish each of you a very happy and successful week. Thanks, everybody.